You know you're dreaming when someone dies in your dream and then wakes up dead in your bed.
Oh man, that is such a chilling, eerie thought to start with.
I know, right? I just couldn't resist. I mean, it completely captures that bizarre, high-stakes, emotional reality of the dream state.
It really does, because in that moment, the absurdity of it doesn't even register.
Exactly. The terror, the grief, the joy, it is all entirely real to you while it's happening. And that contradiction, the intense reality of a completely fabricated experience, is exactly what we're exploring today. So, welcome to another My Mind MashUps deep dive, where we unravel mysteries, spark curiosity, and make sense of complex ideas together.
And we have a remarkably deep journey ahead of us today. The technology we have now to look inside the sleeping brain is finally catching up to the questions philosophers have been asking for millennia.
We really do. And I want to remind you, the listener, that every single deep dive we do here is driven by 3 core values: sparking your curiosity, challenging the assumptions you hold about the world, and expanding your overall understanding.
Which is exactly what today's sources are going to do. We're looking at a stack of incredible research from Nature Neuroscience, the MIT Media Lab, and some really fascinating Stanford neuroimaging data.
Right. And our mission today is to finally answer one of humanity's oldest questions. Are our dreams just, random neural firings? Are they deeply meaningful messages? Or is the truth somewhere in between? Oh, and before we really get going, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy content that makes you think.
It's just the perfect time to dive into this, especially considering how dramatically our understanding of the sleeping brain has shifted in, just the last decade alone.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to decode the dream itself, we have to talk about the machinery.
Right, the hardware.
Yeah. I always used to think of sleep as just, a biological off switch.
Huh.
But looking at these sources, your brain isn't just shutting down, it is actively running a high bandwidth simulation protocol.
That's a great way to put it.
Think about it like this. If you wanted to run a digital simulation this vivid, with full sensory integration, physics engines, and autonomous characters on any AI system today, it would literally cost millions of dollars in computing power. And your brain just does it every night, seamlessly, for free.
It is a massive energetic undertaking for the body. And to understand how that simulation gets built, we kind of have to map the physical terrain of sleep first.
Which happens in stages.
Right, exactly. We go through very distinct stages, starting with non-REM or NREM sleep. When you first close your eyes, you enter stage 1. This is that very fragile light sleep where you might see visual phosphenes.
Hey, what are those?
They're those little flashes of light behind your eyelids. Or a sense of floating.
Oh, is that also the stage where you get that sudden sensation of falling and your whole body violently jerks awake? Because I get that all the time, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. Yes, those are called hypnagogic hallucinations. And that physical jerk is actually a prime example of the brain's mechanics at work. Well, your vestibular system, which handles your sense of balance, it gets confused as your muscles rapidly relax. So your brain misinterprets the muscle relaxation as actual physical falling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it sends a panic signal to your limbs to catch yourself. But assuming you pass through that safely, you enter stage 2. And here, the brain starts generating what are called sleep spindles.
Okay, the sources mention those, but I really struggle to visualize what they actually do. Are they just random spikes in brain activity?
Not random at all, actually. Sleep spindles are generated by the thalamus, and you can sort of think of them as active sensory shields.
Shields, like blocking things out.
Precisely. They are rapid bursts of brain waves that essentially block external noise from reaching your cortex. The spindle mechanism actively intercepts, say, the sound of a passing car or a dog barking, preventing it from waking you up.
That makes perfect sense. The brain is locking the door so it can really get to work.
Right. And that brings us to stage 3, the deep, slow-wave sleep.
Which, from what I read, isn't where the vivid dreams happen.
No, not usually.
Right, this is purely the physical restoration phase. Your body is repairing tissue, clearing out metabolic waste, consolidating basic memories. It's the heavy lifting of biological maintenance.
Exactly. But then the entire architecture shifts, and we enter REM sleep. Rapid eye movement.
And this is the theater. This is where the complex narratives happen.
Yes. During REM, your brainwave patterns shift dramatically. If we look at the monitors, your brain looks almost entirely awake. But evolution has installed this brilliant, absolutely necessary safety mechanism called muscle atonia.
Meaning you are effectively paralyzed from the neck down.
You are.
I love thinking about this like unplugging the video game controller.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right, because the console is running the game at maximum graphics, the fan is whirring, and the processing is just off the charts. But because the controller is physically unplugged, your actual physical avatar, your body, isn't, kicking the bedroom wall when you're fighting a dragon in your mind.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. If that atonia mechanism fails, you end up acting out the dream, which we'll talk about later, but it can be incredibly dangerous.
I can imagine.
But the most critical discovery from these recent neuroimaging studies is how the brain balances this simulated state. We used to think of consciousness as binary, right? You are either awake or you are asleep.
But it's actually a highly nuanced spectrum of regional brain activation.
Exactly.
I saw those fMRI statistics in the Stanford data, and they completely blew my mind, but I didn't fully grasp the mechanism. So the visual cortex is operating at 70% of its wakeful activity, the prefrontal cortex drops by 50%, and the limbic system spikes to 120%.
Yep.
What is actually happening in the brain with those ratios, like practically speaking?
What's fascinating here is that this specific ratio perfectly explains the bizarre, emotional nature of dream logic.
Okay, how so?
Well, your prefrontal cortex is your logical reasoning center.
Right.
It's the reality checker. Because it is suppressed by 50%, it is essentially tipsy or impaired.
Okay.
So when you walk through a door in your childhood home and suddenly step onto a spaceship, that suppressed logic center just sort of shrugs and accepts it.
Tis fine to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, your limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain, is running at 120% activation. It is an absolute overdrive.
Which means the fear, the joy, the profound anxiety you feel in the dream is actually mathematically more intense than what you typically feel when you're awake.
Yes. The emotional engine is revving with the pedal to the metal, and the logic gatekeeper has completely left the steering wheel.
Wow.
And since the limbic system is churning out all this intense emotional data, the brain has to do something with it. It has a biological imperative to construct a narrative to house the emotion.
Which completely flips the old psychiatric models on their head, doesn't it? I mean, I remember learning about the activation synthesis hypothesis in college.
Oh yeah, the classic model.
Right, the idea was that dreams were just random electrical static firing in the brainstem, and your higher brain was just desperately trying to stitch that noise into something coherent. It framed dreaming as this, biological glitch.
It did, but the new functional MRI research reveals that it's not random static at all. The emotional seeds are actually highly specific to your waking life.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think of your amygdala generating a seed of genuine anxiety during the night based on a really stressful workday. Your visual cortex, running at that 70%, weaves a visual narrative around it to make sense of the feeling. Say, a monster chasing you through a dark forest.
And your tipsy prefrontal cortex accepts the monster as absolute reality.
Right.
So the narrative is fictional, but the emotion is fact.
Exactly.
Being chased by a monster in a dream is just your brain's compressed visual mechanism for processing the feeling of being threatened or overwhelmed in your waking life. It's literally an active meaning-making machine.
And because it operates without those waking logical constraints, it becomes a phenomenal creative incubator. Sleep disconnects the rigid linear boundaries of how things, quote-unquote, should be, but it preserves our deep pattern recognition abilities.
Which perfectly explains why so many massive scientific and artistic breakthroughs happen in this state. The research points out that 87% of creative professionals report their dreams directly inspiring their work.
It's a staggering number.
It is, and the historical examples in the sources are what really got me, like Georgia O'Keeffe capturing floral imagery, Paul McCartney waking up with the melody for Yesterday.
And those insights into DNA.
Yes, and August Kekulé discovering the ring structure of the benzene molecule after dreaming of a snake eating its own tail.
And we can actually explain the mechanism behind that now. Kekulé's linear waking mind couldn't solve the chemical structure, but his sleeping mind, free from the prefrontal cortex's rigid rules, used associative visual spatial reasoning.
So the snake eating its tail was just a spatial representation of a chemical ring. The brain found a workaround.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? The data shows that regular dream journalers capture an average of 4.2 ideas per week, but only about 1 in 10 of those dream images successfully convert into finished art or a viable waking solution.
Right, the conversion rate is quite low.
So I have to push back a little here. With a conversion rate that low, does this mean creative dreaming is just an innate talent that only a few lucky people have? Or is this a psychological muscle that literally anyone can flex if they train it?
The evidence strongly suggests it is a muscle. The variation among individuals comes down to recall and attention, not necessarily innate brain architecture.
Meaning if you pay attention to it, it grows.
Exactly. If you train yourself to pay attention to that state, to signal to your brain that this data matters, you increase the yield of those creative connections. Which brings us to the ultimate form of paying attention.
Lucid dreaming.
Yes.
Oh, this is the holy grail. Waking up inside the simulation. What is physically happening in the brain when someone realizes they are dreaming?
Well, by definition, lucid dreaming is when you become consciously aware that you are dreaming, while the REM dream state continues uninterrupted. When we look at the fMRI scans of someone achieving lucidity, we see a totally unique neural signature.
What does it look like?
We see simultaneous activation of the visual cortex, which is generating the dream, and the sudden reactivation of those prefrontal metacognition areas that are normally suppressed.
So you are scientifically measurably awake and self-aware inside a completely fabricated reality.
Yes. It allows for actual conscious control over the dream environment. This isn't science fiction or mysticism, you know. It is a measurable, documentable neurological state.
And it's something millions of people actively want to learn how to do. Real quick, if this is resonating, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive. And really, please do like, comment, and subscribe to hear more of my Mind MashUps deep dives.
So let's talk about the evidence-based techniques for actually achieving this state. Because labs like the University of Ljubljana have standardized the protocols.
Yeah, the first one the sources outline is reality testing, which is actually a daytime practice, right?
That's right.
You regularly ask yourself, am I dreaming? Throughout your waking day, and you perform a physical check. The classic one is pinching your nose shut and trying to breathe through it.
Because if you're awake, you obviously can't.
Right. But in a dream, the physical blockage isn't real, so you'll actually feel yourself breathing through a pinched nose. But I have a huge problem with the data here.
Oh. What stands out to you?
Well, the research says that after 4 weeks of daily practice, it increases the probability of dream awareness by about 30%. Hold on. 4 weeks of constantly pinching my nose in public, and I only get a 30% bump.
I know, it sounds a bit underwhelming.
It feels like a massive amount of waking effort for a minor increase. Why is the brain so resistant to waking up?
That's a very fair critique. The resistance comes from just how powerfully that prefrontal cortex is suppressed during REM. You are fighting against a profound biological chemical block. The 30% increase actually represents a massive achievement in deep habituation. You are training a habit so deeply into your basal ganglia that it eventually fires on autopilot, bleeding over into the dream state despite the chemical suppression.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Reality testing in your waking life is basically running a software diagnostic check.
Yes.
You're constantly pinging your environment to verify the physics engine. And if you ping it enough, you'll eventually ping it while the physics engine is glitched in a dream.
That's a great analogy. Now, the second technique, which a 2024 meta-analysis in consciousness and cognition found to be the most reliable, is mnemonic induction of lucidity, or MIL.
How does that work?
Before you fall asleep, you intensely visualize yourself in a dream, realizing that you are dreaming. You are setting a firm mnemonic intention.
And then there's the wake back to bed method, or WBTB. The mechanism here makes a lot of sense based on what we discussed earlier.
Walk me through it.
So, you sleep for about 5 to 6 hours, purposely wake yourself up, stay awake for just 20 minutes, and then go right back to sleep. You're essentially trying to spike your REM density while your waking consciousness is still slightly active.
Correct. But the foundational requirement for all of these techniques is dream journaling. Writing down every single detail immediately upon waking.
Even if it's just fragments.
Exactly. Because this isn't just about memory, it's a signaling mechanism. You are training the brain's salience network to recognize dream states as important data, which vastly improves natural recall over time.
The pro tip from the sources is to use a voice memo app if turning on a light shatters that fragile memory for you. Just grab your phone and mumble into it.
Highly recommend doing that.
But beyond just flying around or having fun, taking control of the simulation opens up a fascinating psychological frontier. I mean, if you are fully conscious and lucid, are you mentally responsible for your actions within that dream?
It's a profound puzzle. If you choose to do something completely out of character, in a hyper-realistic simulation where you know there are no real-world consequences, what does that reveal about your subconscious.
Right. And the research pushes this even further into actual physical skill transfer?
The sports studies.
Yes. The sources show athletes practicing physical coordination skills, like playing the piano or running a play on the field while in a lucid dream, and they wake up measurably better at the task.
It's incredible.
If the brain is firing the exact same neural pathways and the physical performance actually improves in the real world, are they technically awake in a different reality?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it proves that the dream state is highly mechanistic and manipulable. It's not just a series of mystical visions, it's a physiological workspace that we can directly interface with.
And naturally, because of this manipulability, the tech industry has absolutely exploded with attempts to capitalize on it.
Oh, completely.
The sleep tech boom is everywhere. You have wearables, headbands, apps, all promising to biohack your sleep. But the sources are very clear on separating the real clinical science from the commercial pseudoscience.
And there's a lot of pseudoscience out there.
Yeah. I saw a lot of acronyms in the verified science section that I really need you to translate for me.
Absolutely. So the gold standard in clinical science is polysomnography, or PSG. This is a comprehensive sleep study that uses specific sensors.
Okay, what kind of sensors?
It includes an EEG, which measures the electrical brainwaves we've been discussing. It also includes an EMG, which measures muscle tension, so we can verify if that atonia paralysis is actually working. And an EOG, which physically measures how rapidly your eyes are darting around during REM.
So using PSG, we can verify that certain audio-guided sleep masks, which deliver gentle sound cues during early REM, actually do trigger lucidity for some users. The science actually backs that up.
Yes, it does.
But then you have the unverified commercial claims. Things like brainwave music that claims to magically force your brain into REM sleep using frequencies.
Right, and external auditory stimuli cannot directly force the complex biological architecture of your brain into REM sleep. That is pure pseudoscience.
And what about these apps that claim to use AI dream interpretation to decode your symbols? I mean, I have to push back hard on this. We just established that a dream is your brain's highly personal, emotionally compressed narrative.
It is.
Isn't an AI spitting out a generic interpretation just a modern attempt to commodify the subconscious?
I would argue yes, because it completely strips the psychological context from the individual. A symbol of a dog in your dream based on your childhood memories means something entirely different neurologically than a dog in my dream.
Exactly.
The clinical field doesn't bother with generic interpretations. Instead, they use dream manipulation for profound mental health interventions. Because for individuals with PTSD, dreams aren't creative playgrounds, they're survival mechanisms going haywire.
The section on imagery rehearsal therapy, or IRT, was probably the most impactful part of the research for me. Can you explain the mechanism behind how they are treating trauma? Because I'm wondering if I could use a milder version of this for my own recurring stress dreams. You know, like the classic showing up to a college final exam I haven't studied for.
Nightmare. You absolutely can use it for that. The mechanism behind IRT is essentially debugging the code of the trauma. Patients work with a therapist while awake to literally rewrite the script of the recurring nightmare.
Like writing a screenplay.
Basically.
Yeah.
They craft a new, safe, empowering ending. Then they use the lucid dreaming techniques we discussed, like MIL, to enact that new ending while they sleep.
Wow.
They're going into the limbic system while it is highly plastic and overriding the fear response with a new narrative.
And the efficacy rate is staggering. Between 70 and 80% of patients report a significant reduction in nightmare frequency. That is life-changing.
It truly is.
And when the physical mechanics of sleep break down, it further proves how mechanical this all is. Look at sleep apnea. It fragments the REM cycles so badly that people lose their dream recall entirely, but they wake up with heightened emotional reactivity because the limbic system never got to fully process the data.
Or consider narcolepsy, which causes sudden violent transitions between wakefulness and REM sleep. The mechanism of muscle atonia and vivid dreaming kicks in while they're actually awake.
Which means they experience those hypnagogic hallucinations while walking around in broad daylight.
Exactly. The dream imagery bleeds directly into their waking visual field. And conversely, REM behavior disorder is when the muscle atonia fails completely, and people physically act out the intense motions of their dreams.
All of this, the neurological mechanics, the trauma therapies, the physical disorders, it all leads us to the deepest part of the dive. Because the mechanics of sleep can be so jarringly real, humanity has spent thousands of years trying to make sense of it culturally and philosophically.
This raises an important question. If your dreams feel as perfectly real to you as sitting in a chair right now, how do you verify the chair?
Oh, man.
Philosophy calls this the hard problem of dream consciousness. Neuroscience is amazing at mapping the where and the how, right? We can point to the visual cortex lighting up on an EEG, but philosophy asks the why. Descartes famously wrestled with this, questioning whether consciousness even requires external sensory input to exist.
Because subjective experience is happening completely independently of objective reality.
Precisely.
And culturally, we have always revered this isolated state. Native American traditions view dreams as vital messages from spirit guides. In ancient Greece, they built specific dream temples called Oneiroi, where people would actually pay to sleep and receive prophetic guidance.
The setting was everything.
Just imagine stepping into an ancient Greek Oneiroi. You lie down in a sacred temple, surrounded by incense, fully believing that the gods are about to speak to you. The placebo effect, combined with the hyper-emotional REM state, must have been incredibly powerful.
It would heavily influence a narrative your brain constructed that night, without a doubt.
It just makes me wonder about identity. If your prefrontal cortex shuts down logical self-monitoring and you are acting completely out of character in this temple dream without your waking moral constraints, are you still you in the dream? Or does the absence of logic make you a fundamentally different version of yourself?
That tension of identity and control is exactly what we explore in modern pop culture too. We see it in films like Inception. Though fiction heavily exaggerates the amount of cinematic control you actually have over the architecture.
Right.
We see it in literature, from Walt Whitman's theory of a parallel universe to Kafka using dream symbolism to explore identity in the metamorphosis.
Okay, so if I want to step into my own modern Oneiroi tonight, where do I actually start? The research lays out an 8-week implementation plan, but I want to understand the why behind the steps.
Sure. So weeks 1 and 2 are all about foundation building. You need to get a notebook and commit to writing down your very first thought upon waking every single day.
And as we discussed, the why here is signaling to your brain's salience network that this data is worth keeping.
Exactly. Simultaneously, you start your daytime reality testing. The nose pinch test, checking mirrors, things like that.
Then, in weeks 3 and 4, we move to lucidity training.
Right. This is where you introduce the mnemonic induction technique before you fall asleep. Intensely visualizing, becoming lucid.
And you can try the wake back to bed method to spike your REM density?
Yes. And if you get even a flash of lucidity, write down the entire narrative detail.
Got it. And then the final stage.
Weeks 5 through 8 are for advanced exploration. This is where you experiment with the manipulation we talked about. Try changing a scenario mid-dream to override a stress response. Start identifying recurring emotional themes. Ask yourself, what unresolved waking emotion is my limbic system trying to process tonight?
It really is a profound psychological journey. And it brings us to our core takeaway for today. The most creative, insightful people aren't those who just grind away and never sleep. They're the ones who learn to harness what happens when their minds wander while their bodies rest.
It completely redefines the value of sleep. It transforms it from a passive biological necessity into an active, highly creative state of problem solving.
I couldn't agree more. And I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over today. If the physical brain is capable of simulating a perfectly real three-dimensional world during REM sleep, complete with physics, profound emotions, and autonomous characters, entirely without any external input, what if our waking life is just another layer of sensory input being fed into that same simulation engine?
Wow.
Right? Is the pure, unfiltered consciousness we experience in our deepest dreams actually our brain's true default state of existence?
That is a thought that will keep you awake tonight, or at least change how you view tomorrow morning.
Or hopefully make you very excited to go to sleep. Find My Mind mashups everywhere you listen. Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, TikTok, and YouTube.
We truly love hearing how you interpret these complex ideas.
Absolutely. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective could shape our next deep dive. Until next time, sleep well and keep questioning reality.